Ramblings of an Old Mind. A few jokes.
Hello. Okay, we're good. So, I'm going to start off by a little story. We're all seniors here. Lots of times people don't believe us. So, I'm going to tell you this story about Jerry and Sally. Jerry and Sally were celebrating their 60th anniversary, and when they'd retired, they'd move back to their old home, their old neighborhood. So on that day, they decided they'd go wander around. So they held hands and they walked back to their old school. And it happened to be the school was unlocked, so they went in and they found their old classroom, and there was the desk that Jerry had carved, "Sally, I love you, Jerry." So they reminisced, and it was a nice day. So they're heading back home, and a Brinks truck goes by and drops a sack of money, almost hit them on the street in front of them. So they don't know what to do with it, so they take it home. They get it home, and Sally dumps the money out, counts it, and there's $50,000 there. And Jerry says, "You know, we got to give this back." And she, no, finders keepers. So she goes and hides it in the attic. So the next day, the cops are doing a canvass of the neighborhood. And they come to Jerry and Sally's, and they come in and they said, "Listen, did you folks see a bag of money yesterday? Did you find one?" Sally said, "Nope, never saw it." And Jerry said, "She's lying. She found it and she hid it in the attic." And she says, "Don't listen to him." She says, "He's senile. He doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what he's talking about." So the cop says, "Okay, Jerry," he said, "I'm going to ask you some questions." He said, "Okay, now, Jerry, I want you to start from the beginning. So tell us a story." So Jerry says, "Well, when Sally and I were walking home from school yesterday," the cop turned to his buddy and said, "Yeah, right, we're out of here." So this gal, she had to have a heart surgery, and while she's on the operating table, she has a near-death experience, and she sees the Lord, and she says to him, she said, "Is this it for me? Is this it all over?" He says, "No, you have 33 years, 2 months, and 12 more days to live." "Oh, that's great." So anyways, after her heart surgery, she comes out, she thought, "Well, I'm in the hospital. I might just as well get breast implants, facelift, liposuction, and tummy tuck." And then while she was there, after that was over, she figured, well, what the heck? She called a gal, and she had her change her hair color and got her teeth whitened. So she finally leaves the hospital, and she's walking across the street, and she gets hit by an ambulance and killed. She ends up in heaven, and she sees the Lord, and she said, "I thought you told me that I had 33 more years to live. And why didn't you pull me out of the path of that ambulance?" He said, "Oh, I'm really sorry." He said, "I didn't recognize you." So every Monday morning, we got a few golfers in here, I'm sure. Every Monday morning, the guys called themselves the Dawn Patrol. They were the first group out, the first foursome out in the morning, and away they'd go. So this Monday, they were out and they were on the third tee. And they're standing there getting ready to tee off, and this guy comes up behind him and taps on one of the guy's shoulders, and he turns around and he hands him a note, and it says, "Excuse me, sir, I'm a deaf mute. I'm a single golfer. I'm playing on my own. Would you mind if I played through?" And this guy wasn't very pleasant. He said, "Sorry," he said, "you're a single. You get no special privileges on the golf course. You can stay behind us." So you play a couple more holes, and they're on halfway down the fifth hole, and all of a sudden this ball comes flying through the air, and it nails the guy that wouldn't let the mute through, right in between the shoulder blades. Really hurts. And he turns around, he looks back down the fairway, and there's the mute. So I discovered this exercise that some of you might benefit from. It's called the potato bag exercise, and basically what you do is you find a nice spot where you got a nice level area to stand, and what you do is you take 2 5-pound potato bags and you hold them out to the side, and now you see if you can hold them for a minute. And then once you reach that level, then what you do, you go up, work yourself up to 10-pound potato bags, and you hold them up, one in each hand, and hold them out till you can do that for a minute. And once you've done that, you graduate up to 25-pound bags, and that's where I am now. And then once you're comfortable with that, you put a potato in each bag. And no one hires seniors anymore either, you know. And I've got an example of this. You can picture this. There's an HR manager interviewing this senior, and he says, to him. He said, what would you say is your greatest weakness? And the senior says, honesty. And the HR manager says, I don't think honesty is a sign of weakness. And the senior says, I don't give a damn what you think. So this guy gets on this plane, he's got 6 kids. And he finally gets them all settled down. He takes his seat, and this woman across the aisle leans over to him and she says, listen, she says, are all those kids yours? He said, no, ma'am. He said, I work for a condom company. These are customer complaints. So, well, I got to quick throw this in. Like when they have these stories about like when you're 70, who cares? You can do whatever you want. Well, I gave my mother-in-law last Christmas. I gave her what did I give her? I gave her a cemetery plot. So this Christmas I didn't give her anything, and she said to me, "Why didn't you give me something for Christmas this year?" Well, you never used the one I gave you last year. Oh, and I had a bad day about a week ago. I rear-ended this guy, and we both got out of our cars, and it turned out he was a dwarf. And he walked up to me, and he looked up at me, and he said, "I'm not happy." And I said, "Right, which one are you then? Grumpy?" Just an obscure thought. I can't understand why women are okay that J.C. Penney has an older woman's clothing line called Sag Harbor. What's with that? Oh, so anyways, the cops, they have these tip lines. Well, this guy phones a tip line. He says, "Listen, I got to report my neighbor, Jack Murphy. He's hiding marijuana in his firewood. I don't know how he gets it in there, but he's got it there." And the cop says, "Well, thank you very much for the tip, sir." So the next day, the cops show up at Jack Murphy's place. They go into his woodshed, and they hack up all his wood, and they're there about 2 hours, and they don't find a thing. So they leave. They're really upset. And just after they leave, the phone rings. And he answers the phone. He said, "Yeah." He said, "Jack, this here's Floyd." He said, "Did the police come by your house this morning?" He said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, they did." He said, "Did they cut up your firewood?" He said, "Yeah, they did." He said, "Happy birthday, buddy." So this cop, he's out on patrol, and he gets a call to report to a domestic dispute. So he goes up. It's an apartment. So he goes up and he bangs on the door, and he opens the door, and there's a woman standing there with a gun in her hand, and there's a guy laying on the floor, dead. And he said, "What happened here, ma'am?" She said, "Well," she said, "I just had a freshly mopped floor, and my husband's always walking on. I had enough of it, and I shot him dead." So he looks at her, he said, so he goes, he gets on his mic, and he calls the desk sergeant. "Hey, Sarge, you know that domestic you sent me to?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, a woman shot her husband to death because he walked on her freshly mopped floor." And the sergeant said, "Have you arrested her yet?" He said, "No." He said, "Why not?" He said, "The floor is still wet." So this pastor's in this taxi, and he reaches up and he taps the taxi driver on the shoulder lightly like this, and the taxi driver screams. He almost loses control, almost hits a bus, and stops the taxi about a foot from going through a store window. So he said, it was quiet in the cab for a few seconds, and he says to the guy, he says, "Dan," he said, "don't ever do that again." He said, "You scared the hell out of me." And the guy said, "Well, gee, you wouldn't think just a little tap on your shoulder bother you." He said, "Listen, this is my first day driving taxi." He said, "I just retired after 25 years of driving a funeral hearse." And here's an obscure thought. If you get an email telling you that you can catch swine flu from tins of ham, delete it. It's spam. So this couple were in their 90s, and they go to the doctor for their annual checkup. They get their checkup, and everything's fine. And he said, "You're getting up there now." He said, "Probably you should write things down before you're going to do them so you won't forget." So they said, okay, we could do that. So they go home, and that night they're watching a bit of TV, and her husband gets up and he said, listen, I'm going out to the kitchen, can I get you anything? And she says, yeah. She said, give me a bowl of ice cream. But she said, maybe you should do what the doc said, write that down, bowl of ice cream. She said, I can remember a bowl of ice cream. So she said, well, wait a minute, I want strawberries on that ice cream. Maybe you should write down strawberries with ice cream. He said, I can remember strawberries with ice cream. So then she said, well, wait a minute, I'd like some whipped cream on that too. So he says, well, she said, you should probably write that down. No, I can remember that. So he goes, he's gone about 20 minutes. He comes back, and he hands her a plate of bacon and eggs. And she looks at the bacon and eggs, and she looks up at him and says, where's my toast? So these Siamese twins, they go to a pub in London, and they go in and sit down, and they say to the bartender, don't mind us, we're joined at the hip. I'm John, and this is my brother Joe, and could you bring us a couple of rum and coke, please? So the bartender goes, and he brings him a couple of rum, and he says, you know, he said, I've been a bartender here 25 years, and he said, you're the first Siamese twins I've had in my bar. He said, is this your first trip to England? And they said, no. He said, where are you from? They said, oh, we're from Canada. And he said, is this your first trip here? No, we've been coming here for 10 years. We rent a car and we drive around for a couple of weeks, don't we, Joe? And Joe said, yeah. So he says, he said, you must really love it here. And he said, love it here? We hate it here. Your weather's terrible, it rains all the time, your food's not very good, and your beer's warm. And the bartender said, well, why the hell do you come here every year then? He said, well, it's the only chance Joe gets to drive. Okay, where was I? Okay. This grandmother, she's got to go pick up her grandchildren, and oh, that reminds, this is just something stupid I got to do right now. It just jumped in my head. My grandkids love, a lot of people have grandkids here, right? Anyways, so I do this for my grandkids, and they love this, and it's so stupid, but I got to do it for you. So, I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here's my handle, and here's my nope, guess my sugar bowl. So you can use that one. So anyway, so this grandmother's going to pick up her grandkids, and she's late, so she's speeding, and well, naturally she gets pulled over. So the cop pulls her over, and she rolls the window down, and she says, yes, officer, can I help you? He said, yes, ma'am, you were speeding. And he said, can I see your license, please? She said, I don't have one. He said, where is it? She said, I lost it drunk driving 2 years ago, and I haven't renewed it. He said, have you got your registration with you? She said, no, as a matter of fact, she said, this car's stolen. And as a matter of fact, she said, I killed the owner and I chopped him up and he's in pieces in the trunk if you'd like to look. So the cop backs away and he goes and he calls for backup. In 2 minutes, there's like 5 SWAT cars all around them. So he goes and he tells the sergeant, the sergeant goes over to the woman, he says, listen, he said, ma'am, could you get out of the car, please? So she gets out. He says, my officer tells me that you stole this car and you chopped up the owner, put him in plastic bags, and he's in the trunk. She said, well, he said, can you open the trunk? So she opens the trunk, and there's nothing in it. So he closed the trunk, and he said, ma'am, my officer said that you don't own this car, and she hands him the registration. He sees that. So then he says, and he also told me that you don't have a license, so she hands him the license. So he says, I don't understand, he said. He tells me that you stole this car, you chopped up the owner, threw him in the trunk, and you don't have a license. And she looks at him and she said, well, the liar probably told you I was speeding too, didn't he? Okay, this is it. This will be the last one. I call this one Life Explained. So when the Lord was making everything, people, plants, everything, this one day, so he makes a dog, and he says to the dog, look, he said, what I want you to do is you sit on your master's porch, and you're going to bark at anybody that goes by or comes up the walkway. And for that, I'm going to give you 20 years. And the dog says, geez, 20 years to be barking at people, that's a pretty long time. How about you take 10 years back and just give me 10? So the Lord thought, that's okay, I can do that. So then he created the monkey, and he said to the monkey,